Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who is in a totally different gray shirt than the one I was wearing in my previous videos. You're just going to have to trust me on that. I'm also the guy who picked Casey O'Neill to dominate Ariane Lipski. It's going to be close on the feet, but once she gets it to the ground, she's going to smoke her. Mark my words. All right. I'm here to recap UFC 296. I'm going to start with Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. This wasn't such a great fight for anybody. I mean, Leon did an incredible job neutralizing Colby Covington, but that's really all he did was neutralize him, and he didn't have to do anything else. Leon Edwards was clearly winning this fight from round one, and it was on Colby Covington to make shit happen. To try to make shit happen. And Colby seemed a little too comfortable, losing on the outside, getting his leg chewed up. And he put his foot on the gas a little too late. He did have success. I thought he won round 5. That's the only round I'd really give him, although some of the rounds were interesting. But regardless, round 5, whatever, it was too little too late. Leon Edwards largely dominated Colby Covington. Again, he found an advantage early, striking on the outside, and was chewing Colby up. Colby never really made anything happen on the outside, on the inside. He kind of faked a takedown and just wanted to touch his leg, as Joe Rogan said early on, but I don't remember him really going for a takedown until round 3. And I think he felt on a physicality level, on level 1, that it was going to be difficult to control Leon Edwards the way he's controlled other fighters. Leon Edwards is a big, strong guy, very sharp athlete, and he's got skills everywhere at a high level. And he proved here in this fight that he could hang with Colby as a grappler. Leon Edwards, I thought, went largely, he was even with Colby. In the end, after round 5, I guess I'd say he was out-grappled altogether. But Leon Edwards still took Colby down twice. Got a little overzealous going for a mount and conceded position once. He went for a ninja choke that was pretty deep. I thought Leon fared very well in the grappling, and that's whatever little grappling there was. Where he did very well is by making this a striking match. And Leon didn't need to take risks. Again, he's the guy that was leading early on. So you can't blame him for sitting back and neutralizing Colby Covington. It's one of the best welterweights of his era, and he was having an easy time with him. Would have been nice to see him get the finish after all the trash talk, to get that sweet moment. But Colby's a very tough guy to finish as well, obviously. And Colby, for him, with all the trash talk and all the shit he talked, he definitely underperformed here. He did not perform. This is the one time where I'd say Colby Covington did not fight for my money. I've lost on him before against Kamaru Usman, but he gave it his all in that fight. In this fight here, he seemed a little shell-shocked, a little, thrown off, flustered from the get-go. And Colby always gets more comfortable and gets better as the fight goes on, but hey, unless you're finishing guys in round 5, that's not something you can count on. Not, sitting back for 4 rounds like he did last night. So, Colby definitely shit the bed here. And after all that trash talk, you expected more from him. I know I did. And instead, he lost a pretty comfortable decision to Leon Edwards. As for who they fight next, I think Leon is fighting Belal Muhammad. But I heard Dana White at the press conference say, I don't know, we'll look into it. When asked about Shavkat jumping Belal Muhammad, which would be hilarious. But either way, Leon Edwards got some guys that are going to give him a good fight coming up. I think they're actually going to give it their all. Colby, I don't want to shit on the guy too badly, but especially after talking all that trash, he really he did not press in this fight the way he should have. And for Leon Edwards, man, the guy's looking perfect. You look at what he did to Colby and what he did to Kamaru lately, especially in the rubber match, the third fight. Leon Edwards is the best welterweight on the planet right now. And it's going to take some Shavkat type of fucking danger to convince me of otherwise. So, Leon Edwards is the man. Colby Covington, this is the last title fight I'm assuming he's going to have. Maybe he can get a grudge fight and main event some fight nights or whatever, or beef up some pay-per-view cards, but Colby's day in the limelight, I think, is done here. Speaking of which, Alessandro Pantoja keeps himself in the limelight with a dominant victory over Brandon Royval. I thought Brandon Royval fought very well here. This was a case of a guy losing all 5 rounds, in my opinion, but still performing very well, which is tough to do. And Royval had moments where I thought he was taking over, but I think everybody's going to have those moments against Pantoja. Pantoja's a guy that kind of has a bit of that Robbie Lawler in him, where, you know, he can take off for a round or whatever, but he's never really out of the fight, and he's always plotting his next move. And Pantoja here, his next move was always going to be a double leg, always going to be a quick takedown on Royval. On the inside, he was much stronger, and anytime he was able to wrangle Brandon Royval, he was able to secure a dominant position. So this was kind of an easy matchup for Pantoja, but he still fought a guy that I consider to be the most dangerous flyweight in the world, Brandon Royval, and he had to go through a lot of adversity, striking, grappling. He was always he had to be on his game for this one. Again, Royval, I thought, didn't win a round really, maybe in the end, I don't know, but he was very competitive throughout and never let Pantoja relax. So Pantoja did what he needed to do, largely neutralized Royval, but it's not like he was outgunned on the feet either. There were moments where Royval was taken over, but in general, I thought Pantoja certainly hit harder and was timing some hooks throughout that he was never behind, really, in the striking fight. Although in round 3, it looked like the tide was about to turn. But Pantoja, he is the king of the flyweights now. I do wonder how a rematch would go with like him and Davison Figueiredo or whoever else. But he looks still as durable as ever, and the guy's got skills every which way. I was actually surprised he didn't get the finish against Brandon Royval, especially in round 4. I believe round 4 he secured the back, had a body triangle for 4+ minutes, and in the same position he found himself in where he choked out Royval the first time. But Brandon Royval, despite being exhausted and outgunned kinda everywhere, he was game and he survived and made a real good fight out of it. So, good fight. Hope to see Royval in some high-profile spots in the future and maybe even work his way back to a title shot. But at the very least, he's one of the most exciting fighters on the planet. And for Alessandro Pantoja, he's one of the best fighters on the planet. That's a nice consolation. That brings me to Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Wonderboy Thompson. Wonderboy was submitted for the first time, and it just speaks to the danger of Shavkat. Shavkat, I thought, performed very, very well. I thought he was having a tough time getting in on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and getting takedowns from the clinch, which I thought might be a factor here. I thought it might help Wonderboy's chances. And Shavkat did have a tough time. And once they were separated, I thought Wonderboy was, leading the dance on the feet, too. So this was a fight that could have gotten away from Shavkat. But instead, Shavkat made it happen in round 2, where he was a little more tired and having a difficult time getting Wonderboy to the ground. And he persisted, got it to the ground his way from the clinch, and eventually drowned him. I thought he looked really good. And his submission was great too, Shavkat. He was going for a guillotine and a darce and just working the front head, and then with 20 seconds left or so, he spun to the back because I think he knew, I have one good squeeze in me with 20 seconds left, and I'm going to go with the one I trust. And he got the rear naked choke with a face crank or whatever, but regardless, he had quite a squeeze, and he forced a tap from Wonderboy with seconds left in round 2, which is something he's done before as well. I believe the Neil Magny fight was very deep into round 2. Yeah, it was. I just watched it recently. But Shavkat, he's got that danger, carries it deep into the fight. Again, Jeff Neal, he got out of there in round 3. And here, he's the first guy to get Wonderboy out of there, which doesn't seem like the greatest accomplishment. Again, Wonderboy, he is a kickboxer, but he is very, very tough to get out of there. and very tough to even dominate positionally in the first place and have a shot at getting him out of there. So I think Shavkat, what he did was exceptional, and I don't even attribute it to Wonderboy being Wonder Man at 41 years old almost. I think Shavkat is just exceptional, and here he got a big, big win where I wouldn't mind seeing him skip Bilal Muhammad, to be honest, but I think it's going to Bilal. And for Wonderboy, he gave it a good fight here. I thought he was handling himself well, on the feet, in the clinch, I should say. But eventually he just succumbed to a much stronger and younger fighter. And on the ground, he didn't have much for him. So it's a really tough loss for Wonderboy being finished for the first time. But I still think Wonderboy is incredibly sharp at 40, 41 years old by the next time he fights. And he can beat a lot of top welterweights. A lot of them. I'd love to see him fight Leon Edwards, to be honest. I think he's got a shot there. It's not going to happen, of course. But I'm just saying, I think the world of Wonderboy, as a striker especially, but also as an MMA fighter. That brings me to Paddy Pimblett versus Tony Ferguson. All right. Paddy Pimblett dominated Tony, wasn't able to finish him. Tony Ferguson looked tough and scrappy. We got to see the scrappy Tony Ferguson, but he was relegated to being scrappy from his back. And Tony throws some mean elbows, sharp elbows. He's always hurting you, bloody your face up, make you see blood, and whatever he was saying in the press conference. But he is no longer a top fighter. He's no longer a middling fighter in the UFC. Paddy Pimblett was way too much for him. I thought Paddy could have put him away at some points with some ground and pound, but Paddy knew he had him beat everywhere. Tony was visibly uncomfortable on the ground and on the feet, and just a step behind, and in general outgunned. He's got the toughness and the heart and everything else, where if you don't knock him unconscious, he's going to be throwing elbows at you till the final bell, but most of them are going to be from a really shitty, disadvantageous position, because he just does not have the physicality, the strength, or, frankly, the skills at this point to compete with most fighters in the UFC. Maybe he'll be fighting Jim Miller at UFC 300. I don't know. That might be a bad move as well. I think Tony should probably just retire, but he's still a guy, despite being on a 7-fight losing streak, that seems like he still wants to fight. And I don't know what his contract situation is, but maybe we'll see him again. As for Paddy Pimblett, Paddy got some revenge, I want to say, or whatever. Redemption is a better word, after the Jared Gordon fight. I thought he looked really, really good here. But still, on some level, I'm sure he's disappointed that he wasn't able to put Tony Ferguson away. The chin's the chin. Maybe he can't crack Tony Ferguson's chin. Tony's only been knocked dead once. But I thought Paddy could have mauled him on the ground, and if he was a little more aggressive in passing, I thought he could have dominated Tony Ferguson a little more. Tony is, he's weak off his back. He always had the reputation for being strong off his back, but he's not. His guard is always very passable, and he's physically weak, and getting weaker as he gets older. But Paddy still dominated, looked really fucking good, and got a clean victory over a former champion. So there's that. Josh Emmett knocked out Bryce Mitchell. This was one of the best knockouts I've ever seen, I think. Bryce Mitchell was knocked dead. Just knocked dead with a clean right hand. There was no follow-up shot needed, no follow-up shot even attempted. And Bryce was out on his feet. Well, he was out on the ground for 5 minutes, and then he was out on his feet for 5 minutes, and Joe Rogan was all over that, saying, "What the fuck are you doing? Get this guy down." Makes it look like amateur hour. It's embarrassing, being an MMA fan, a UFC fan, watching a shit show like that, and, whatever. Fair game to Rogan for calling it out. But still, Josh Emmett, at 38 years old, I think he's 38. He's still got the hardest punch in the division. Maybe pound for pound, the hardest punch. Like I said in the pre-fight video, his record doesn't represent his power. He's got, I think this was his 7th knockout. the guy is Rumble Johnson. That's who he is. He just got that insane body. He's got that Michael Chandler thing going on, like a fucking Ninja Turtle, where he springs into fucking punches and kicks at everything like you can't imagine. And here, it all came crashing down into Bryce Mitchell's head, right on the chin, and it's one of the greatest knockouts I've ever seen. I'd say it's better than his Ricardo Lamas knockout, which is Josh Emmett's best moment before that. And it is a top shelf win as well. I don't know what Bryce was ranked or what Emmett was ranked, frankly. They're both ranked pretty high. But Josh Emmett was on the downswing, and he's a guy that I had kind of written off. And here, I mean, not only does he springboard Bryce Mitchell, but again, he gets one of the greatest knockouts ever. I'm sure it's a contender for knockout of the year. I can't think of the whole year, but I knew when I saw this was one of the best, if not the best. And he reminds everybody that he is the most powerful featherweight in the fucking world. So, excellent win for Josh Emmett. For Bryce Mitchell, this compromises him. And the first thing I thought of with Bryce was, it's the first time he's been knocked out. You can't dismiss him as having a weak chin. But then when you combine this with all the weird shit he says, it kind of makes it seem like there's something going on or whatever. It just makes him seem more fragile. Where I wouldn't be thinking that if he never said some crazy horse shit. But he does. So kind of changes his profile as a fighter. But regardless of the shit he says, that knockout itself, that's a setback and a half for anybody. Whether you're in your 20s or your 30s. And whether you've been knocked out before or not. That did some permanent damage. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Bryce Mitchell goes from here. I'm sure he's going to be taking quite a bit of time off. But I expect to see a different fighter, frankly. I'm going to be looking at him differently the next time you hear me talk about him. That brings me to Alonzo Menifield and Dustin Jacoby. This was a good, fun fight, close fight. I thought Alonzo Menifield did win. I thought he kind of pulled ahead in the end, bullying around Dustin Jacoby and clipping him. And Alonzo Menifield, he's a guy that I have underestimated throughout his career. He's a guy who still only has 3 losses and only finished once by OSP. I thought that could have happened here. And he fought hard in a 15-minute fight against Dustin Jacoby, a guy that I consider to be a bad matchup against him, and he slowly but surely took the fight from him. Started catching him and getting on the inside, and I thought he was just straight up out hustling Dustin Jacoby down the stretch. And Alonzo Menifield now, whatever he is, 14-3 or something, 15-3, but he's got an exceptional UFC record. He's got a good bit of momentum as well. They're tapping out Jimmy Crute and the draw against Jimmy Crute, which was a great performance of his. And now he gets a solid victory over Dustin Jacoby, a guy who's proven to be an above-average UFC light heavyweight. So Alonzo Menifield, the future is still bright, whereas I didn't think it was going to be. And for Dustin Jacoby, he still looks healthy, and he doesn't look like the most versatile fighter, but he hung in there against Alonzo Menifield, whereas I think a lot of guys would have fallen to the power. So I still think Dustin Jacoby's a very healthy fighter. Again, as an MMA fighter, he's only been TKO'd once, knocked out, and it was to King Mo Lawal on the ground. He's been knocked out as a kickboxer, of course, but still seems like a healthy fighter, and in his prime, he was just out-hustled by a guy in his prime, Alonzo Menifield. So I expect to see both guys stick around the UFC for some time, but for Alonzo Menifield, again, the future is pretty damn bright, and much to my surprise. That brings me to Karol Rosa and Irene Aldana. Both girls here gave Fight of the Night and just incredible performances. I thought Karol Rosa was leading the dance early on, dominating at range with leg kicks against a girl who's got 4 inches of height on her. And I thought she was comfortably winning the fight, but she wasn't able to hurt Irene Aldana. She was beating her up, of course, with the leg kicks, but she wasn't able to have any big moments. And Irene Aldana, she's got that power that will shine. She's got incredible power in her hands. And It was a fight in which she was kind of allowed back in, and her power started to take over. I still thought it was a really close fight in the end. It could have gone either way. I thought Carol Rosa had a really good round 3, but Irene Aldana scratched and clawed and threw down and gave herself every shot she could of winning this fight, and she did win the fight. And for Carol Rosa, she showed incredible toughness too. Her face was smashed in for the whole 3rd round, and she did not go anywhere. She was fighting well in the pocket, still trying to make the fight about leg kicks on the outside, but, obviously with the size of Irene Aldana, she wasn't always afforded that comfortability, and she threw down when she needed to, and I thought it was a very close fight to the bitter end. Could have gone either way, and Irene Aldana gets the nod. Great fight, instant classic. I would have liked to see more grappling, I guess. But still, a very close fight. Could have gone either way, and both girls showed a tremendous amount of heart. Irene Aldana, I think this fight tops her fight with Lucia Pudilova, which was another classic she had a few years ago. But excellent fucking fight. That brings me to Cody Garbrandt knocking out Brian Kelleher. Brian Kelleher, who doesn't live far from me at all. So I'd like to give him a shout out for having the worst fucking haircut I've ever seen. The worst fucking haircut I've ever seen. Man, I was instantly rooting against him when he walked into the octagon. And I'm typically a Brian Kelleher guy, but hair like that, it's fucking over. And Cody Garbrandt made him pay for having hair like that. Cody Garbrandt was sharper, faster, and more powerful, I'm sure. And in the end, he had enough power to get Brian Kelleher out of there. Clipped him with a big punch in the center, and Kelleher went face planted. I think something might have been broken or whatever. But if not, maybe it was a spirit. Because Cody Garbrandt hits really fucking hard, and when he is firing on all cylinders, he's got the best offense in the division, maybe. He's insane. It's just the defense where things kind of, changes the complexion of the fight. But Brian Kelleher, he had the power to knock out Cody Garbrandt. Sure, he just was a step behind the whole way, however long it took. It was a matter of minutes. And in the end, he couldn't withstand the power of Cody Garbrandt. And Cody gets another first-round finish. Looks really good doing so. And again, now he's got some momentum, Cody Garbrandt. I never thought he'd regain momentum, but he's got some here. He called for Davison Figueiredo, which would be awesome for Davison, in my opinion. I don't know. But anyway, we'll see what happens. That brings me to Ariane Lipski tapping out Casey O'Neill. Casey O'Neill, yeah, she was supposed to have a big advantage on the ground, according to me. Ariane Lipski has fallen many times on the ground, and Casey O'Neill has won many times on the ground at the UFC level. And I thought this would be a matter of her getting on top and then proving what a bad matchup it was. And instead, she never got on top. She was outstruck comfortably from Ariane Lipski, who was much more athletic and quick. And Lipski won the fight, in my opinion, on the feet, but for her to get the victory on the ground was extra sweet. And it was a weird, tight armbar from a bad position, but she had it really tight, and Casey was forced to tap. I think Casey kind of had some of the fight beaten at her at that point, but still, an armbar for Ariane Lipski, round 2. I don't know what the odds were there, but they were fucking astounding. It just shouldn't have happened on paper. Not that Ariane Lipski is not dangerous submission-wise. She is. Ask Luana Carolina about that. But here, this was the last result I expected. I thought Casey O'Neill could have won by decision, TKO, or submission first, and Ariane Lipski would have won by decision or knockout first. But for her to get the submission, the last thing I expected, and made it an extra sweet win for Ariane Lipski, who's beautiful, by the way. But for Casey O'Neill, this definitely changes her complexion, her profile as a fighter. She's got 2 consecutive losses now, and this one did not look good. I thought she did look good against Jennifer Maia, who I consider to be better than Ariane Lipski, but here she looks vulnerable in a lot of different ways. On the feet, she was cracked, rocked, and on the ground, of course, she was tapped out. So Casey O'Neill, I still think she's got promise. She's 25, 26 years old, and she's got a lot of great skills. But again, looking more vulnerable now, and she's got to patch up some holes in her ship. That brings me to Tagir Ulanbekov versus Cody Durden. This was a largely dominant victory for Tagir Ulanbekov. I did worry about his gas tank, especially after dominating Cody and holding his back from the standing position. But Tagir has good cardio. He's got really good submission skills, and he has really good wrestling as well. I thought he cleanly dominated the wrestling in this fight, which is where I expected Cody to have the advantage. And I do think Cody would have made it interesting if these guys fought for 15 minutes. But Tagir already proved to be pretty dominant early, and he was able to, hey Stevie the cat, he was able to get Cody Durden out of there with, I believe, seconds left in round 2. And he did it with a face crank. So Tagir proving once again he's a dangerous guy with submissions. It's not just a first round thing. He's gotten plenty of finishes deep into the fight against some of his best competition. Rounds 2, rounds 3, round 4 even. But here he's the, I believe, 4th guy to submit Cody Durden and 3rd guy in the UFC. But it's a win that still means a lot because Cody Durden was on a 4-fight winning streak. Kind of like Martin Buday, I believe. But great win for Tagir Ulanbekov. Guy is incredibly versatile, incredibly dangerous, and has a lot of great traits as a fighter. Again, that Tim Elliott loss, he was the last man standing, and that fight was still pretty close. And that brings me to Andre Fili knocking out Lucas Almeida. This was a pleasant surprise. Andre Fili, he's a guy that's not really known for his danger, even though he's shown it on plenty of occasions, but that's just because he's been in the UFC for 30 years. But here he is the first guy to knock out Lucas Almeida. It's something that I can't say I thought was impossible. Lucas has been knocked silly by Mike Trezano, and he's been hurt a few times. But here, Andre Fili, for him to be the first guy to get it done, was a great moment for a UFC veteran. I love when the veterans come through in big ways like this. And Fili cracked him on the inside with a combination, but really just one short right hook is what got it done. And then once he got him on the ground, I thought Fili fought very, very well. He was incredibly aggressive, framed some nice shots, I believe straight lefts, and just after 10 seconds, he started tagging Lucas to the point where Lucas couldn't recover. That was a situation in which we've seen a lot of fighters regain their composure and hold down the guy beating the shit out of him. But Andre Fili created space, found his chin, and got the finish. Looked fucking awesome. And for Lucas Almeida, he's still an awesome fighter, incredibly potent finisher, and a dangerous guy, but he's looking vulnerable now after being dominated by Pat Sabatini on the ground and then knocked out by Andre Fili here. It makes him look vulnerable, and of course he's on the bottom end of the UFC roster as it is. Speaking of which, Martin Buday, who was the king of the bottom of the UFC roster, was dominated and finished by Shamil Gaziev. Shamil Gaziev looked fucking awesome here in this fight. I didn't have the firmest grasp on him as a fighter, and I still don't, but now that I've seen him go against Martin Buday and look the way he did, my estimation of him has gone up, and every one of his skills and traits as a fighter, I think he's a lot faster and athletic than I gave him credit for. Of course, he's gigantic. I gave him plenty of credit for being gigantic, but he was faster and more powerful than Martin Buday. And Buday was never really in this fight. I think Buday's plan was probably to slow things down and exploit holes in round 3 and round 2, but much like Colby Covington, he wasn't able to make shit happen, make that a reality, and give himself a shot there. It was just Shamil Gaziev dominating from the get-go. I think Shamil Gaziev is a welcome addition to the UFC. I think he just stepped over the bottom 5th of the division, bottom quarter. I don't know. Martin Buday being 4-0 or whatever, 3-0, and looking pretty good. no, 4-0. And then getting dominated by Shamil Gaziev. It doesn't mean Shamil Gaziev is the next heavyweight champion, but it means his ceiling's pretty high, and the guy's going to be sticking around for a long time. I mean, if he gets defeated and he gets knocked down a peg or two, I still see him beating the Josh Parisians of the world pretty easily. So I think he's going to be around for a long time, and I can't wait to see him fight again. All right, that's it for UFC 296. Stevie the cat is demanding that I feed her, so I better get on this shit. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And, well, I know if you saw the main event, it wasn't that thrilling. But, whatever. Overall, fun fucking event. Like, share, subscribe, all that horseshit. Check out my other videos.